y'all, we're here for day 7 and today we're going to talk about my writing sample. So as many of you have probably already seen from the application portal, there is an option to submit a writing sample. Today I'm going to walk you through that writing sample that I submitted, why I submitted it, and how it represents a different angle of you as an applicant. So the paper I wanted to submit was within the realm of urban planning. It was specifically focused on a course I took on the health impacts of transportation policies. And this was based in an international context. So I did a case study on Mexico City and their transportation systems there and the health impacts associated with implementing resources like Uber and Lyft. This paper was urban planning related, which is part of the reason I chose it. I also really enjoyed that class with my professor. Even though he didn't write one of my letters of rec, I still really enjoyed the class. We got along super well and he remembered me. And third, I also did really well in that class. I believe I got an A. And it was actually technically through the University of Chicago Harris School of Public Policy. So it was an advanced level course compared to my undergrad program. The second page of my paper, you can feel free to pause and read it if you want. But my entire paper ended up being about 6 pages, and that's including citations. Another reason I thought this was a great paper is because it highlights this hate-on's metrics, and this essentially is outlining some of the ways to factor in how transportation policies impact public health, and it was another way of doing like critical analysis through written form. So I wanted to exemplify my ability to do that type of analysis based off of information and research I had gathered, because I know those are critical skills in an academic setting. As you can see, here is the final page of my paper, and it's basically talking about my interpretations, final thoughts, and kind of a recommendation, but not really. And essentially any changes I would make to current policy that would be impactful. And here's like pictures I included. Make sure you cite your sources. If you're gonna submit a paper, make sure the citations are correct, given the debacle that happened last year. Here's my cited sources. When submitting a work sample, it's important to keep in mind what you're trying to highlight. So I was trying to exemplify that I had not just US-based experience with urban planning issues, I had a more international lens, and also that would be useful to bring into a classroom. I had a distinct interest, as I outlined in my essays, that I wanted to think about the intersection of public health and urban planning, and this paper speaks to that obviously because the class was verbatim called Health Impacts of Transportation Policies. The third thing that it helped highlight for me was my ability to be succinct in my research, my analysis, and my overall recommendations that I make in an urban planning related context and conversation. I think this is important because, you're going to be in a classroom full of, 30 students maybe at most. And in those instances, you want to be able to get your point across. You want to be able to express an authentic thought, and you don't copy anyone. And you also want to make sure that it is succinct and doesn't take the entire class to explain to everyone else in the room. And I think for me, that was critical to uplift as well, because that's not necessarily outlined in my essay or my resume or my portfolio, which was images, but doesn't really count. And the reason I say that is because I maximized my capacity to outline experiences in my resume. I maximized the amount of words I used in my essays. Like, I think the limit was 500 words, and I might have used like 496 of them. And then for the statement of purpose, it was like 750 words. I used like 700 of them. And that is because I knew those were dynamic and important spaces for me to express myself, both professionally, academically, and personally. So I wanted to make sure that I took full advantage of that. Whereas a writing sample is supposed to show a succinct version of how you will operate as a student. That was a lot to digest, but I do think it is important to submit a writing sample because they do elevate your application in a way and also gives you a chance to like show off as a student If you have a paper that you really enjoyed or really loved writing about and it's specific to your program, so for example, if you did a business case analysis on the same transportation related topic that I talked about in Mexico City and you're applying to B school, that's a great way to kind of think through like, oh, this is how this would impact my application packet, and this is why it would be useful to include over a different English essay you had to write one year. Specific to like urban planning, public policy programs, ones that depend more on writing, this is a good way to highlight your writing skills and potential, because to be quite honest, a lot of people don't know how to write, and that's okay. No judgment, no shade, but it does put you at the top if you do know how to make an argument and have a through line thought in your essay, in your research paper, whatever the case may be. I wouldn't necessarily recommend including an entire thesis unless you're particularly passionate about it and you're going to talk about it in your essays, or you're planning to continue that research and you indicate that somehow in your application packet, just because nobody's going to read that. Nobody's gonna read all 127 pages of your thesis paper. I'm sorry, boo, but like, do you? But I think it's better to have something that reviewers will actually look at, read, and examine critically, rather than like skim and be like, okay, I get it. I'm happy to talk about my writing sample a bit more in depth if anyone's interested. It was a really interesting topic to me. I highly recommend taking that class if you're also at the University of Chicago. But that's all I have for today. So drop your comments or questions in the section below. And if you don't have any other questions, I will see you tomorrow. Bye.